Sometimes it doesn't let me go live if the title is too long. But I think it's working. No, maybe not. Yep, should be working. Okay, so basically I titled the video today, Bulls hold crucial 3750 support, which we've been identifying, and then buyers await earnings season. So yeah, let's get into it. My name is Patrick Hawe, and I'm an associate member of T3 Trading Group, which is an SEC registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA SIPC. All trades placed by myself are placed through T3 Trading Group. You should carefully consider whether trading is suitable for you in light of your own financial condition. Please pause the video, read this disclosure. And position disclosure, definitely traded today, but did not add any new swings. Maybe I should have, maybe I shouldn't have. We'll see. So let's talk about the market, what happened, and what we can expect going forward. Is this a fake tail for SPY, or is it that big? I guess that's not fake. Oh yeah, this is a fake upside tail. Why is this doing this? There we go. Okay, so coming into this morning, it was basically what's CPI going to be and how are we going to react? Whatever the technicals are, So 8:30 CPI comes out. For whatever reason, we uptick it. I always think it's so funny when stuff like this happens. The number wasn't quite out. You can see this was the 825 candle, and for whatever reason, we uptick into the number. So God bless whoever bought SPY over 385 this morning. But 8:30, the number comes out. Very, very hot, above 9, right? It was like, 9.1, 9.2. So very hot number. It was expected to be hot. It was expected to be hotter than last month. The White House was coming out yesterday with multiple headlines, multiple press releases talking about how they're expecting it to be hot as well. So market reacts poorly. We hammer a bit pre-market, and then comes the open where, the real money starts to move around a bit. So, again, it was a little bit difficult coming into it this morning because, again, I think it was fairly expected for it to be a hot number, even to the point where, we expected it to be hot and miss and, be even hotter than expectations. So coming into the open, I think we, for the most part, we were leaning more to the long side than to the short side, with SPY, this pre-market low, as an important reference point, right? So market opens, very shaky, and today was not easy. I'll kind of talk about what happened, but in my opinion, today wasn't easy. I think a lot of you guys agreed with that. It was not a directional day. It was a very algo-ish, kind of rangy type day, especially after we pretty much just got into resistance and got into the supply zone. And we saw signs of this early on. But so market opens, shakes around a bit. First 5-minute bar is green. So that's usually a good sign. I feel like, and don't quote me on this, but I feel like every gap and go to the downside day that we've had a red bar initially off the open. So pretty decent bid off the open, right? Price correction right to the ADMA. First test of this ADMA, we reject it and fail it. Shouldn't really be a huge surprise with that. Looks like we bumped our heads against this for a bit here, actually. So fell back down, held those lows, made a higher low, and then right back up to this 378. So 378 becomes an important level for us as we bump our head, fail, come up, bump our head. You can see there's a tail on this candle right here. This tail right here. So we bump our heads once or twice, a third time. Actually, a fourth time. Is that an inside 5? Yeah, looks like it might be, right? So, yeah, so bump our heads, bump our heads, bump our heads again. But then this third time, and this is what you want to watch for when you're anticipating a breakout or not. This third time, we don't fail. We fail, but we don't get rejected, right? So like you get a tail below 378, another tail, but then you got 5 minutes of holding in as well, as opposed to here you were rejected and sold off, right? Like sell off for 5 minutes, can't even get back up to it, and then just sell off over the next 10 minutes or so. So this is that when we talk about building in front of a level that we want to see, that's exactly what you want to see there. So back above 378. Shouldn't be a surprise that it can't get right through 378 after just coming up from 375. You got two big green bars here. But again, consolidation in front of 378, breaks through. We uptick all the way to 381 here. Come back down, retest that 378, which we pointed out this should pivot here. This is an important level, right? If we don't pivot here, and all the shorts that got squeezed have to reshore. All the buyers that bought in are out of the money. So pivot where we should, squeeze back up a little bit. Then at 2 o'clock, the Fed beige book comes out. But what really shook the markets was Bostic coming out. Bostic was the one who, like a couple months ago, hinted at a September pause. So now he's like doing a 180, and he's all for, or maybe not all for, but when asked about 100 bips rate hike next meeting, he said, everything's on the table. So 100 basis point hike is not fully priced in, but it's definitely not out of the water after today for sure. So that caused some drama for like 5 minutes, and then we just grinded right back up, negated this candle, and then just pretty much did nothing. And it was besides this 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes, it was a very, very, very slow afternoon. And yeah, we closed fairly indecisively, in my opinion. So going forward, what can we expect? So the second half of the title of this video, I said buyers are waiting earnings season. I said that because we talked about it pretty early, where it was such a big day. CPI is such a big number. It's such an important number that if it's going to be one of those events where it's really bad and it's just so priced in / sellers are so exhausted that we have like a big up day because of it, today should have been better in my opinion. And we've seen that. We have seen days where the SPY chart starts out down here and by noon it's up here. We've seen that before. So I feel like if you basically have like two sides of buying, right? Like long buying and short covering, and then the opposite side as well. And we were talking about it a lot today. Like I feel like a lot of the up moves today was a mix of short covering and maybe intraday buying. But like real long buying, in my opinion, should have been better. If this was like the scenario where the sellers are completely exhausted, inflation definitely has peaked, it's time to buy, everything like that, I feel like today should have been better. And you can see it in the daily chart, right? Like volume's decent today, but you almost compare it today to like a day after earnings day for a stock. Like the volume's always bigger the day after they report earnings. It's a fundamental change, right? Just like CPI was kind of a fundamental change today. So volume's bigger today, but we should have closed better, and we could have too. So I don't know. It's a little bit. I think today was really tricky, and I think it's going to be tricky today going forward. And you can see it even just like in the afternoon too. Just the way SPY was trading in basically like the 50 cent to dollar increments, where you stop at 381, 378 this level, then you get to this we were pretty much saying above 380, next is 382, you stop at 382, you hold 380, 381, and then this held 378, 381.50. Like it's just these algo kind of random moves where news comes out, totally negates it for no reason. Really nice strong initiation bar right here. After like a nice breather here, this should go. That just totally gets negated right away. Just like really weird algo action. So I think it's hard to say where we are going forward. It's going to depend really on earnings season, and then we got the Fed as well. So Today is the 13th. The Fed is 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks from today is the next Fed meeting. And then earnings starts tomorrow morning and Friday morning with the banks, and then some tech next week. And then that Fed week is also a big earnings week. So I mentioned it before here, but the way they treated MU's insanely bad guidance, we'll see if that can be a theme going forward for earnings season. That's probably going to be the key thing to watch for, in my opinion. And if that can be the case, SPY probably makes a bigger, it's going to be like a few weeks out, right? So this might like chop sideways more, but we might get like a big wedge that resolves to the upside. That'd probably be your bullish scenario. And the bearish scenario is just, everything's bad. Don't fight the Fed, and we're in a downtrend. And speaking of like the volume too, I was even going to say, like, if you didn't know, there's no way it's hard to tell even like today was a big like CPI day. I mean, it was a day 3 down. It was a big gap down, but it wasn't a big gap down until the CPI number came out. And so arguably we were just slightly extended and slightly oversold on a third day gap down below the moving average. So we had a bit of a price correction to the moving average, but this is now sloped down. We're below these moving averages. We're, lower high. We're still in a downtrend. So hard to say what we do going forward. This 374-ish, it's like today's low, but there's a few tails over here. The real level is 37.50. I guess let me pull this chart up. So this is the futures chart. So this is today's candle. And you don't even see it because SPY had that pre-market low and then bounced from the pre-market low and opened a bit higher. So it's harder to even see it on the daily chart. But just this 37.50, it's right here from these tails back here and then today's tail. This 37.50 is huge, 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 huge. So like we always emphasize, keep it simple, stupid, just respect your levels. So know your macro environment, know your macro theme. We got earnings coming up, we got the Fed coming up, but for keeping it simple and just respecting your levels, 37.50 on S&P, roughly 374, 373.50 here. Probably the real confirmation is 373.50 on SPY. It's like a huge level. If this breaks new, 370s in play and everything, but I feel like new lows on the year might be in play if this breaks. And then on the upside, 385. Definitely need to clear these moving averages. It's a bit of work for the bulls to do, but the bulls let us down. So what can I say? So roughly 384 to 385 on SPYs. All this consolidation that we were trying to hold earlier and get and broke down from, which we could have cleared. We could have gotten to today if the bulls really want to make a stand, but they couldn't do it. So 384 to 385 on the upside, 375 to 373-ish, roughly this area, but really 37.50 on the downside. If we clear above, then we could start to really construct something higher here. And if we break below, then, it is what it is. Don't fight the Fed, and we're in a bear market and we're in a downtrend. So yeah, I'm trying to think of if I had anything else to talk about, but no, not really. Today was, again, I thought it was tricky. I thought it was confusing, and this, I think, is a pretty indecisive close. So hard to say what we're going to do going forward. I'm not one to make predictions. I'll let the market tell me. If SPY wants to get above 385, then, I'll go with the bulls, and if we want to lose these lows, I'll go with the bears. And for now, we're kind of just neutral. We're neutral in a downtrend here after today. So, yeah, I think that's everything to really go over. So yeah, happy to take any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that. I'm trying to think like if there's anything else I'm forgetting, but I don't think there is. It was just, hot CPI number. we bid up on it, but not in a way that like bulls took a really big stand, which we've seen that before. I don't know if this was like a news day or not. I know this was a big day that bulls took a stand. But if we really close strong, not even necessarily into 385, but we should have been able to close better. So we'll see. If we gap up tomorrow above today's high, then we could have a gap and go. And that will be a technical reason to go higher. But I think it's just a bit indecisive here, and it seems like people are waiting for earnings season at this point. So yeah, happy to discuss anything you guys are looking at. Josh putting some pictures up. I'm sure they're good pictures. Feuds trading after the close, breaking down a bit. Fed quiet period starts on Saturday, so they only have 2 days to jawbone. Good to know, Shane. That'll be nice to have a Fed quiet period for sure. Those guys like to talk a lot. Next 2 weeks will be volatile. Yep, for sure. Yeah, Fed meeting 2 weeks from today. Lots of earnings. Apple July 28th, so that's the day after the Fed. Yeah, for sure. Mike L says get ready to buy dips and sell rips. I agree. Hey Pat, I think Rowan brought this up earlier. Do you think we can draw any parallel from the last rate hike where we had an up day with no sellers the day of, and then the next day we got crushed? Oh, so that was, I know what day you're talking about. Was that this day, I think? Or maybe even like more recently. Do you think we can draw any parallel from the last rate hike where we had an up day with no sellers? Do you mean like a parallel to today? Where like you think that could happen tomorrow? Where like the real sellers come in tomorrow? I feel like that's what you're saying. And definitely possible. Which is why I don't like to, so definitely possible. But I wouldn't short until we break, respect your levels. And if that's going to happen, we'll see how we gap, right? If we gap down big, then we'll have to assess that. If we don't gap down big, and if we're somewhere in here, I wouldn't just blindly short thinking that's going to happen if the price action's not telling you it's happening. But if that's happening, then, if we lose this 37.50, we're easily going to 3,700 that day, easily. Year lows will be in play, but this support just became really, really, really big. In my opinion. So, and I'm not saying we're going to break it. Like, we definitely, again, we could gap up and go tomorrow. We could gap up to 384 or so, and within the first 20 minutes be clearing 385 and, looking better. It depends what the technicals are telling you, really. So, it's definitely possible, Nick. But I think you don't get too biased thinking like that, right? Just wait for the real signal to short. See a couple YouTube questions. Mr. Trees. How you doing, Mr. Trees? Why did IWM bounce off the 172 like that 5 times and not sell off? Bouncing off 172 and not selling off? Oh, so like up here, you mean? I can't tell you why it didn't break down. The market didn't really break down either at the end of the day. This IWM 172, similar to the SPY 382-ish. We didn't even really get to 382 there. And that Q's 288. It's just a resistance level. And the volume was pretty solid the first half of the day. You can see it really died out over here. So what's going on in this action is just, for the most part, algos fighting algos, where there's just no real, again, you need like big money to move markets, right? So if you start here, or like if you start around here, and then after 2 hours you end around here, but you have like up and down, up and down, up and down, it just means that net there wasn't a net inflow or outflow big enough to break this up or break this down. So you got supply here, which is what we were talking about before too, and that's like that's almost, I don't want to say like a bearish sign, but the phenomenon or whatever I was talking about earlier, like the philosophy where if this was going to be like one of those days where CPI's like you want to sell the rumor, buy the news, if you will, where, you know, that's just how smart money works sometimes. Like, you buy the hot CPI number this morning because we're just too overcooked and too pessimistic into it. Then the combination of the shorts getting squeezed and closing as well as the new buying coming in should have pushed us higher, and it didn't because we ran into overhead supply. And if we still have, if we have overhead supply, the overhead supply is sellers. So the first half of the day, there was net more buyers than sellers. And then in the middle of the day, there was more sellers than buyers. And overall, there was, we closed pretty much flat. So there was overall an equal amount of buyers and sellers pretty much for the most part today. So let me just read your question again to make sure I answered you. Why did IWM bounce off and not sell up? So yeah, it's just it's resistance. So you got, and that's more like supply. It's more passive selling, right? Like, there's so many ways to execute market orders and big orders and sell, and there's just so many ways to do it. Like if there's an IWM, 172 resistance, that doesn't mean, someone just offers 10 million shares of IWM at 172 and, it goes back to bed, right? Like they might say sell it over 172. So that's when you get these tails, you get up through 172 and they're selling, and then that real seller overtakes whatever momentum algo buyers are driving up this, and it comes back down. And, so they might be selling over 172, they might be selling in a zone from 172 to 173 or something like that. So it's a passive seller, but that's the price they want to sell at. They want to sell 172 or better. So they don't want it to come back down, and then they're not trying to panic out and sell it down here. They're just waiting for it to come back up and passively sell it over 172. So it can't break through 172, but you're not having aggressive sellers smacking it down and getting out of bid either. So you just have like algos buying it back up and whatnot. So that's the best explanation I can give you, really, is you just have a passive seller there. There's resistance, there's supply there. Definitely important for that to break going forward. It will be, notable when that can break through eventually. But yeah, I mean, if you're shorting, so like if you're shorting off that, you're hopefully getting some covers here, you're getting some covers, and you don't get paid in a big way, and you probably don't keep that short overnight because it didn't really give you that big of a follow through. But yeah, hope that makes sense. Hey Robert, from technical aspect, we just fade the gap into previous day close, which is what psychology of gaps is telling us, and buyers gave up to push us higher. Would you said tomorrow we could see a real result from CPI's report, meaning sellers step in? It's definitely possible, Robert, for sure. And that's what I think Nick asked as well, pretty much the same question. It's definitely possible, but I'm not betting on that right now because I have how am I supposed to know that? Like, I can't see the future. If you want to bet on that, then, you take some lotto puts overnight or something like that, but I'm not, heavily shorting SPY because I think that's going to happen because I don't think there's any way for you to know that that's going to happen. And like I said, if that, just know your levels, right? So if that's going to happen, meaning we have a real sell day. So again, let me just read your question. So like if we're going to have a real sell day, it's going to be a big red day, right? Otherwise, it's not a real sell day. It's just like a doji whatever day. So if we have a doji whatever day, we're probably not going to break 37.50, 370, 350, 374-ish, 373. I guess let's just call it, what was the pre-market low for SPY today? Because that's what really hit it. All right, so 373 is the ultimate level for SPY. So if we're going to have like a doji whatever day, then we're probably not going to break 373. Even if we break today's low, we probably won't break 373. That's the real level, right? So you might have people saying, oh my God, we're breaking today's low, but 373 is the real level. If we're going to have a real sell day, like you are possibly predicting, then we're probably going to break 373. And if we break 373, we're probably going to at least 370. So it's possible, but I'm not, even if, I don't want to say I'm not predicting that, but like I'm not predicting on it because I'm not betting on it. And if that's going to happen, there will be a chance to make money off of that down move, I think. So yeah, I don't know. It's definitely possible. Like the day after effect. Sometimes you see that for earnings, right? Like especially if something reports in the morning. Real firms need like a day to assess it. But just know your level is 373. If we break 373, look out below for a little bit at least, but don't like fight. Just have like a bias and fight a short like that. So, but I'm sure you know that, Robert. Any other questions or anything? Yeah, and that's what Mike, and that's what worries me about. Well, not worries me, but just like watch out below if we do break that. Because again, I already brought this daily chart up, but it's just such a big level where you would have thought we could have broken it today, but I guess it was a day 3 down into it. But just these tails. This is the futures, so you can see it more clearly. Just these tails are so perfect. It's probably gonna be a decently quick spill if we do end up breaking those tails. So, but if we don't break them, then we don't break them. I'm not shorting here predicting that we're gonna break them. That's something that is just very hard to do. See, Bugsy on YouTube had a good trade. Nice trade, Bugsy. Then end of the day, got back in for put for the morning. Nice. All right, well, any other questions or anything? I'm not surprised that there's not a lot of questions because I'm sure a lot of you are kind of just as, I don't want to say confused as me, but I guess convictionless as me. But it is what it is. So just know your levels. 384 to 385 on the upside, I think, is very important. Even if we break today's high tomorrow, we're just going to have the 21 EMA. So 384 to 385 on the upside. If we can really break and close above that in the coming days, we might be looking at this daily wedge breaking to the upside, which has a measured move from 375 to 390. That's 15 points. So that has a measured move to 405. So again, 385 confirmation, and ideally that's breaking a wedge to the upside with a measured move to 405, and 373 on the downside very possibly puts new lows in play, definitely at least 370 and lower. So we'll see which of those two levels we can break in the coming days. And in the middle, I don't know, it's hard, but we got earnings coming up as well. So we'll pay attention to how we react to the earnings names as well. And, sure, most of them are going to be bad, but the good ones will probably trade up pretty decently. And then the okay ones, if they can buy up the bad ones, then that'll definitely say something in terms of seller's exhaustion. So yeah, JP Morgan and I think Morgan Stanley tomorrow too, right? JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley tomorrow, and then Wells Fargo and Citi on Friday. So yeah, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see what Jamie has to say too. He's the one that it was like a month ago at this point that he said basically a hurricane's coming, right? So yeah, that'll be interesting to see what he says. Hopefully it's not worse than a hurricane. Hopefully he doesn't upgrade that hurricane to something worse. Maybe it's just a tropical storm now. So we'll see what he says. All right, yeah, we'll see how we gap and go from there. 385 on the upside, 373 on the downside, which will break. Stay tuned and find out. Have a good night, everybody.